Division podcast. I am your host, Khaled Abdallah, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Sulman Huck. And as you can see on your screen, or when you click the podcast itself, we are going to be redrafting the top 16 picks from the 2020 NFL Draft, aka the COVID Draft, because everybody was at home. And as you can see on the screen or in the cover art, Roger Goodell was in his basement making all these picks. We're doing this because a lot of these guys are up for big extensions. Brandon Ayuk, who was in this draft, is in the news, dominating the news cycle as the latest receiver that wants to get traded. Jordan Love just got paid. A lot of these guys are getting paid as they're coming up on their rookie extension. So we want to go over the top 16 picks and see if we would stick with them or redraft or whatever. So we'll go ahead and we'll just jump right in. Sulman, you're on the clock with the first overall pick. The Cincinnati Bengals selected quarterback Joe Burrow out of LSU. Who did you have the Bengals taking here?
I did not have them going Joey B. I thought about it. I had them going Justin Herbert, actually. I mean, you can make the case, right? You could say Burrows, you could say Hurts, you could say Herbert. I just feel with like Herbert's athletic upside, maybe they could do more in that offense when Zach Taylor offense. So I think, you look at Herbert and what he's done already in the NFL, right? Like he was the rookie of the year, right? And he had the most passing touchdowns by a rookie, completions, all this stuff. So he had a great rookie year. He has more yards, touchdowns, better touchdown interception ratio than Joey B. So I just took the slight edge over there, and he can rush, he can move the ball with his legs as well. So just a slight edge in terms of preference of athletic quarterback versus. And Joey B is great, man. He's great. I'm not no knock on him. I just think he might be even better than Joey B if he went into this Bengals system.
Okay, so what do you say to the people that think Justin Herbert is an empty calories guy? That he's
It's not true.
Good stats, bad team guy.
He's not empty calories, man.
Why? Explain yourself. Explain yourself.
He's just been on bad. He's just been on bad teams. He's just been on bad teams, right? Like the Chargers should have been playoff teams. Like like his rookie year, the year after that. Like they just collapsed. Something's wrong with their defense. Too many injuries. I would say the Bengals have a better shot with Justin Herbert on their roster than Joey B.
Okay, this is not a Justin Herbert podcast, so I'm not going to belabor the point. But I would say there are very few players that are as divisive as Justin Herbert among the nerds versus eye test versus results-based guys, because I think the more casual fans or maybe the more old school fans will say, oh, well, he's never won the division. He's only made the playoffs once. He choked against the Jaguars. They were up, 28-0, whatever the hell it was. So people are starting to wonder, is he the problem? Was it Brandon Staley, who I think was a terrible coach? So, yeah, there's a whole podcast in here just on Justin Herbert and public perception and all that and how that works. So I won't belabor the point. I'll give you the pick. That's fine. I just went with Joe Burrow. I understand there are concerns about his durability. He missed a lot of his rookie year. He missed a lot of time last year. There's concerns. I read or I heard earlier this week, we're recording this on August 13th, by the way, that he's not even able to throw 2 or 3 days in a row because of his wrist injury.
Oh, yikes.
So, yeah, it becomes a case of like, is this guy, he's great. He's an incredible quarterback when he's on, when he's healthy and when he's playing. He's maybe a top 5 quarterback, potentially, easily top 10. So you just wonder, is this the start of things to come where he's just not going to be able to stay healthy anymore? But I think talent-wise, he's already taken them to the Super Bowl, fell just short, literally a play or two short of winning the Super Bowl. So I think you just have to keep betting on this upside. And I think he has the highest upside and obviously fills a position of need there. Next, the Washington football team. I think they were the Commanders at this point. Maybe they were still the Washington football team. Selected edge rusher Chase Young out of Ohio State. Who did you have the Commies taking here second overall?
Yeah, it was pretty clear that they should have taken a quarterback over at number 2 and not Chase Young. I mean, I think Alex Smith is I think he's coming off that gruesome leg injury, or this is the year he suffers. I forget. But Alex Smith is not the answer at quarterback. So Joe Burrow, right? Like for all the reasons you mentioned, he's a great talent, a lot of upside. I think they draft Terry McLaurin also in this draft, so great two players kind of put together, and you kind of build that offense there on Washington, which has been non-existent honestly, and maybe now they turn it around this year. But I think Joe Burrow is the pick for me because I still had him on the board, and he's great. Probably the most upside, like you said, right in this draft class.
So they drafted Terry McLaurin the year before, and
The year before, that's right. My bad.
Yeah, my thought process was because they also drafted Dwayne Haskins the year before. May he rest in peace. I know he has since passed, but that was my thinking was okay. They probably, knowing what we know now, they should have taken a quarterback. But I think at the time it just wouldn't have made sense for them to take a quarterback a year after picking Haskins. I think he went like 14th or 15th overall. I don't think they were ready to give up on him just yet. I think after the second year, they had started to give up on him as a franchise quarterback. But when he came out, I mean, he was highly touted. It's not like this guy was a 6th-round pick. He was great at OSU. So with that in mind, this is not a Justin Herbert hate take because you think I hate him.
sounds like it, Colin. I don't know. You're wearing that Raiders hat, hating on Justin Herbert.
Right?
Fits the bill.
So I ended up going with Justin Jefferson, wide receiver out of LSU, who I think is probably the best player, period, in this draft. Maybe there's some linemen that can compare with his accolades, but not even actually. I mean, he was offensive player of the year, 3-time All-Pro, and we're only counting first team. I mean, I count both. I don't really make the distinction between first and second team. It's like, okay, you're not the second best receiver in the NFL. You're the third or fourth. It's all the same to me. I know Football Reference is a little stricter, but I don't care about that. So still, 3-time All-Pro. Even last year, I think he only played 10, 12 games. He still had over 1,000 yards with trash quarterbacks. So he is probably the best receiver in the NFL. Probably, definitely the best player in this draft. So I think he immediately makes Haskins better. He makes Alex Smith better. And even if they move on from Haskins and Smith after this year, they at least have a guy that's basically quarterback proof. And then, we could have seen him and, I don't know, Jaden Daniels lining up. So, yeah. What do you think?
I like it. Not bad. I knew Dwayne has like what we know about Dwayne Haskins and everything that happens in his career. Just go with that quarterback, man. Like if the guy's not working, the guy doesn't look like he's ready, draft another one.
Fair point. All right. Next up, the Detroit Lions took cornerback Jeff Okudah, also out of Ohio State. So we got back-to-back Buckeyes. Who did you have the Lions taking 3rd overall?
Yeah, I mean, you can't pass up a generational talent like Justin Jefferson, right? So I agree with you. He's probably the best player here in this draft. Surprisingly, he went and picked 22 to the Vikings, so he was pretty down this draft board, and a bunch of other people went ahead of him. But hands down, right? Best wide receiver. I think they had an aging Kenny Galladay here at this point and Marvin Jones. So Justin Jefferson just steps in. And who knows, maybe this, leads to Matthew Stafford staying there. They already had a pretty good quarterback. So maybe Matt Stafford stays in Detroit when they get this elite wide receiver. So obviously you can't pass on Justin Jefferson if he's on the board and you don't need a quarterback.
Can you imagine if you're Matt Stafford, you're going from Calvin Johnson, who is maybe a top 5 all-time guy, to Justin Jefferson, who is, on his way to getting there. Like that's a hell of a transition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously for me, Jefferson is already off the board, but it is an interesting question that, if they did, if he was available, does Stafford stick around? I think maybe it's hard to say. I think he may have just been like, I'm tired of being here. I want a fresh start anyway, even with Justin Jefferson.
He was tired of the losing.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So with that in mind, I'm assuming at this point, the Lions are already thinking about life after Stafford, who I think was 32 at this point. So he's not super old, but also had been around there for about 10 years. So I had them going with Justin Herbert. I thought it would be an easy transition. You get 1 year of Stafford, and then you're just able to move on. They're not making the same trade. Obviously, they're not going to trade for Jared Goff because they already have Justin Herbert. But maybe they're able to trade him to another quarterback needy team and get some other contract in return. So I think obviously I like Herbert as a player. I do think there are some question marks about him long term. Is he really the guy? Is he, I don't know what it is,
I'll
man.
tell you
It's
this,
just,
Khaled. If the Lions had Herbert instead of Jared Goff, they would have beaten the Niners in that championship game for sure.
yes. Yeah, I think so. I think that's
Yeah.
fair to say. There's just, yeah, it's so hard to evaluate quarterbacks because it's just so dependent on everything else around them, the coaching, the receivers, the injuries, the line, whatever. Like I said, Justin Herbert is another podcast unto himself. So, with the fourth overall pick, the New York Giants selected tackle Andrew Thomas out of Georgia. Who did you have the Giants taking here?
Yeah, there was definitely a need for tackle for the Giants. But again, couldn't pass up another talented wide receiver out of this draft class with and CeeDee Lamb. They definitely need a wide receiver. Odell Beckham Jr. has gone to the Browns. Uh, Debated maybe taking Tristan Wirfs here because I think he's probably the best lineman here in this draft class. But if you can get a weapon for your quarterback that you just drafted a year or two ago, might as well get him the second best wide receiver in this draft class, right? I mean, CeeDee Lamb, he's a two-time All-Pro. He led the NFL in receptions last year. He's right up there with Justin Jefferson. I mean, maybe a little bit below than Justin Jefferson, but CeeDee Lamb's definitely up there as well.
I had this debate for a long time. I had a similar internal conversation about, do I go wide receiver? Because at least for me, when I'm looking at the board, if CeeDee Lamb doesn't go here, he's going to drop because there's some other needs. And that's what ended up happening with me. I just think that after what we saw last year with the way Daniel Jones got absolutely destroyed, um, and then some of the other issues they've had over the years with their line, I think you just have to go with a franchise cornerstone left tackle, and that's going to be Tristan Wirfs. I know Andrew Thomas has come along. I know he wasn't so great his rookie year, but Wirfs has just been an incredible player. He's also an All-Pro, Super Bowl winner. He was a second team All Pro, I think. So two-time All Pro basically in his short career. And I think it's hard to pass up a guy that can start on your line for 10, 15 years versus a receiver who is great. Don't get me wrong, but I just think it's a bigger need to get that franchise left tackle.
Yeah, for
All
sure.
right.
That was my debate too. I was like, CeeDee Lamb, Tristan Wirfs, CeeDee Lamb, Tristan Wirfs. I just went with CeeDee Lamb to give Daniel Jones a
Yeah.
weapon.
Man,
Who
this
knows
is
when the
this is
Giants will ever
fun.
get one again?
I don't think we've aligned on a single pick yet, which is
Not a
that's
single pick.
exciting.
Yeah, this is great. This is great.
I will say this was hard because it's so recent.
It
You
was
know,
hard. It was definitely really hard. There are certain guys I was like, oh man, I forgot about this guy. Oh man, this guy's kind of on the up and up now. And then you're like, should I take him?
yeah,
I don't know what he's going to be, right?
exactly. Like, do I ding this guy because he's not on the team that drafted him anymore? Even though I still think he's a really good player. So yeah, it's hard to tell, but I guess that's just part of the fun. We'll come back. Maybe we can come back to this draft in, I don't know, 5 years.
Absolutely, we can. Yeah, for sure.
we'll
Let's do
we'll
it
come back to it.
when these guys are
Um,
all retired.
yeah, there you go. All right, next the Miami Dolphins. They picked quarterback Tua Tagovailoa out of Alabama. Who did you have the Dolphins picking here?
I think quarterback was the right direction. I just took who I think to be the third best quarterback in this class in Jalen Hurts. Obviously, he was a second round guy for the Eagles. He went pick 52. So again, they needed a quarterback, and I know at this time Miami was debating between Tua and Herbert, and they ended up going Tua. But you plug Jalen Hurts right in, and he's a All Pro. I think he was an second team All Pro in 2022. He's a Pro Bowler. He holds like the NFL record for most rushing touchdowns in a season, or he's tied for it in most rushing touchdowns in a season by a quarterback. Pretty good player, and can you imagine him in Mike McDaniel's offense? And then later he gets Tyreek Hill, so that would have been tremendous upside for the Dolphins taking Jalen Hurts here.
And he's a guy that is kind of it's funny that they're linked, him and Tua forever linked because of that national championship game, but he's kind of the antithesis of Tua because nobody ever questions his durability or his toughness. I mean, I don't think people question Tua's toughness, but there's never any question about Jalen Hurts taking hits just because they always talk about, oh, he squats 600 pounds and he's built like a linebacker and that kind of thing. So I jinxed it because we're aligned on this pick. I think it's hard to pass up Jalen Hurts because yeah, he's probably the third best. There's some people I think that would take him over Justin Herbert because of the team accomplishments. He did make it to the Super Bowl,
He
also
did.
fell just short. Lost to Patrick Mahomes. No shame in that. Who's becoming like the Michael Jordan of the NFL, just denying all these great players rings. So yeah, I think it would have been it's an easy fit. I think it would have been he would be awesome in Miami with the offense that they have and the players and the weapons that they have around them. Just an incredible rushing threat, all that stuff. So next,
Yep.
the Los Angeles Chargers selected quarterback Justin Herbert out of Oregon with the 6th overall pick. Who did you have the Chargers picking here?
Yeah, I didn't have Tua going too far down the board. I had the Chargers taking him. Obviously, they needed a quarterback pretty badly, and I think Tua for me is the best quarterback left on the board. So no brainer here for the Chargers to take him. I mean, surprisingly, he led the NFL in passing yards last year. So he's been on the up and up. But
Is it
minus
surprising
his
though? You can throw a 5 yard
not
slant to
surprising.
Tyreek
Yeah, I mean
Hill.
he's throwing 5 years.
You know,
Yeah, and Jalen Waddle, like he's just throwing them slants and they're just taking it off. So I do think Tua was probably the fourth best quarterback in this draft class, given what he's done. Goes to the Chargers. He still has kind of good weapons there, and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, so he can kind of do some of the similar stuff. Good rushing attack there. So I think kind of like he can throw the ball to Eckler. So kind of the same things he's doing in Miami. He could do it in LA.
mm-hmm.
And I think he made a pretty good fit. Maybe you make the case for Jordan Love here. I don't know. Let's see what you got, Khaled.
Yeah. I want to be fair to Tua. He's not just throwing 5 yard slants. He is throwing the ball down the field, but
He's got some bombs to Tyreek as well.
Yeah, there you go. Like a 30-yard completion to an average receiver becomes an 80-yard completion because it's Tyreek Hill. So the numbers are not inflated, but they are extended thanks to Tyreek and Waddle speed and H-Han and all these guys. Just to be fair, I debated this for a little bit. The problem with Tua going to the Chargers, I get it. I just think he would have been destroyed. I mean, with the line issues that we're seeing Herbert deal with, I think you need a level of escapability. I mean, that's fine. I mean, that's a separate conversation. But I think Jordan Love is a better quarterback. So I went with Jordan Love here. I know we've only seen him as a starter for 1 year, or I guess like a year and a half because he took over for A-Rod. But yeah, I think he provides more. He's bigger, he's stronger, more mobile. So yeah, I think that gives him the edge, and I think just long term, I'm going with Jordan Love over Tua, even though we have a smaller sample size.
I knew it. I was like, Khaled's going to take Jordan Love here. I had a feeling.
I was wondering if it was like your anti-Packers bias that was going to have you.
No. I just haven't seen like. I would say we haven't seen enough from Jordan Love, right? Just a smaller sample size. So if we see this like what he did last year, we see that consistently for the rest of his career. Obviously, better quarterback than Tua for sure.
Maybe in 5 years he's the number one overall pick in this redraft.
Maybe, who knows?
Yeah, we'll come back to it. All right, next, the Carolina Panthers with the 7th overall pick took defensive tackle Derek Brown out of Auburn. Who did you have the Panthers picking here?
So Jordan Love wasn't too far behind on my draft board. I took Jordan Love here. I think for whatever reason, the Panthers thought Teddy Bridgewater was their answer at quarterback, but you could still draft a quarterback, right? Even if you needed to groom Jordan Love behind Bridgewater. So, Derek Brown wasn't a bad pick. It's just I think they had a bigger need on the quarterback side of the ball. And Jordan Love, like you said, right, tore it up last year. And if he can keep that up, it's probably a good fit here in Carolina.
Yeah, it's interesting that I think of the top 7 picks already, we've only had one guy that you can really say is a bust, which is Okudah because of injury. Chase Young, maybe TBD.
Almost.
He's on his
almost. He's on his way there.
He's on his 3rd team already, but for the most part, these are hits. Derek Brown, I loved him coming out. I wanted the Raiders to draft him. I thought he would be a great fit. I mean, he's a great player. I think he has 3 interceptions as a defensive tackle already. I don't know how he's doing that.
That's impressive. That's impressive.
He's a really good player. He just got paid, so good for him. But for the reasons that you mentioned, you only have Teddy Bridgewater on your roster as the starting quarterback, who's fine. He's okay. So I went with Tua. I didn't let him drop too far. So we just swapped picks here. I do think Jordan Love is better than Tua, but I think I would have felt bad for Tua in this offense, but I think he would have still had Christian McCaffrey at this point. So, that would have been fine, or would have been nice for him. Not much on the receiver side, but again, if you have that quarterback in place, you can start thinking about, all right, let's go get some weapons for him versus, oh no, we got to start everything all over again. So that's why I went with Tua here. All right. With the 8th overall pick, the Arizona Cardinals drafted linebacker Isaiah Simmons out of Clemson. Who did you have the Cardinals picking here?
Yeah, I ended up going Tristan Wirfs here. I mean, like you said, right? Like you had him going much earlier. I was like, the Cardinals, they could have used a lot of different things on their roster and at this point. I think he's an upgrade over, DJ Humphries. I think they're starting Kelvin Botchman at their two starting tackles. So upgraded guy over here. Protects Kyler Murray's blind side, like you said, right? He's a 2-time All-Pro. He was on that All-Rookie team. He hasn't missed a game. He's been super healthy, and this is probably a guy who we're talking about as a future Hall of Famer, and when he retires. So, for those reasons, you have to protect Kyler Murray, and I took Tristan Wirfs here for the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm. On Isaiah Simmons, this is another guy that I loved coming out of the draft. I think the problem is he's a tweener. He's a linebacker. Is he a linebacker? Is he a safety? Is he a box safety? Whatever. Because he was huge. He's like 6'4", 230, runs like a 4'3", 4'4", whatever it does. I thought this guy is a physical freak. He's going to be amazing. Maybe he just suffered from being on bad teams, and now he's on second team already. Got traded last year for peanuts. So I still think he has high upside. But anyway, I think we had a similar thought process here. Tristan Wirfs is off the board, so I went with Andrew Thomas, who just went a few picks earlier to the Giants. He struggled his rookie year, but he's been great ever since the past 2-3 years. So I think he's a top 20 offensive tackle in the NFL. Maybe he's probably been the Giants' best offensive lineman. And they definitely need to protect Kyler Murray. I know he's going to be running around and doing his thing, but they want to keep this little dude healthy. So I think it makes sense to invest more in the offensive line. The 9th overall pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars selected cornerback C.J. Henderson out of Florida. Who did you have the Jaguars picking here?
Yeah, I was taking a look at this Jaguars roster, and it was a mess. It's like they could honestly they should have just gone best player available. Definitely, their DBs are a mess. I went with Antoine Winfield Jr., so they definitely could have used safety help there. Could make the case here for one of the cornerbacks, like Trayvon Diggs. But again, I thought maybe they shore up that backside first, and they can, this is a deep cornerback class. They could probably get more cornerbacks later. Antoine Winfield, Super Bowl champion, All Pro. He led the NFL's in forced fumbles. He surprisingly has 15 sacks as a safety, which is kind of surprising. So he's a guy you could bring him up in blitz. He can cover. He can do all that good stuff. So versatile player that I thought made sense here for the Jaguars.
I like the pick. I had a similar idea with working on the defensive backfield. I think this is the year they went 1-15. They won their first game and then didn't win again after that.
I think this is the same.
Yeah, which ended up getting them Trevor Lawrence first overall the following year. So good for them for that. I went with Jalen Johnson, who I believe was the 3rd round pick of the Chicago Bears. You did say this is a deep cornerback class. This is a deep cornerback class. I do think you really can't go wrong with a bunch of talent at this pick. This was wide open because, just like you said, they had needs at just about every single position. Could have gone CeeDee Lamb, could have gone AJ Terrell, could have gone Antoine Winfield. There's like 100 names you could have listed here over poor CJ Henderson, who I think is on the Falcons now. But he's one of the guys in this top 15 that is a bust, unfortunately. But I like your pick, Antoine Winfield. He's on my top 15 as well, but I just went with, let me just grab the best corner because let's just go like for like in the position. So next, the Cleveland Browns with the 10th overall pick selected tackle Jedrick Willis out of Alabama. Who did you have the Browns picking here?
I had the Browns going Patrick Queen, who went later in this first round to the Ravens at pick 28. So obviously they could have used some offensive line help, but I think also their linebackers, looking at their linebackers, you're like, oh, these are kind of garbage linebackers. Like I think BJ Godson is starting for them, Mac Wilson, like not great linebackers, and then you upgrade on that linebacker side, pair him with Myles Garrett. Pretty solid team. And Queen himself is, I mean, no knock on Jedrick Willis. Is it Willis or Wallace? I'm not reading this right. Willis.
Willis
No
or
knock.
Wills?
Yeah. Wills?
Wills,
Is it
not Will.
Wills?
I'm like over
Oh
here
wow.
looking at my list.
It's a hard, like
I
there's like
know
an
who you're
I
talking
and
about.
double. It looks like yeah. No knock on him. Decent lineman. But I think when you have a chance to kind of pair a Myles Garrett with a Patrick Queen and like shore up that defense of yours, you just got to do it, right? He's already an All Pro last year, had a great season, and this is a guy that's definitely one of the top linebackers already in the NFL. So I think that made
I
sense here
like the
for the
pick.
Browns.
Yeah, I know he's a guy that I thought about at this pick because he's probably maybe the best defensive player in this draft. Maybe. I know he got overshadowed in Baltimore by Roquan Smith after they made that trade, and that's probably the only reason why he left. But he is a franchise type linebacker. I went a little bit of a different direction. I went with CeeDee Lamb. I couldn't have him drop much further. So there's a couple reasons for this. He played with
I was going to say,
Baker
Khaled,
Mayfield.
I was going to say you were going to, I thought you were tanking CeeDee Lamb to the Raiders is what I thought you were doing here.
I wish,
right?
right? That
CeeDee Lamb
he's
spill.
actually we'll come back to him, but yeah, so he's an incredible wide receiver. You said he's the second best receiver in this class, in a very deep receiver class, so I'm not going to push back on that. He did play with Baker Mayfield in college, so they already have the chemistry right off the bat. You don't have to worry about this. They had Odell Beckham on this roster, so you think of a receiver group that has CeeDee Lamb and Odell Beckham before his knee injuries, before the other stuff has piled up. So all of a sudden, that's a pretty dangerous group. And maybe it gets to the point where Baker Mayfield's still on the Browns because he has his, just like Justin Jefferson going to the Lions, keeps Matt Stafford. Maybe he does the same in Cleveland, but I couldn't let him drop much further. I wasn't trying to manipulate the draft to get to Las Vegas. I will say, if I remember correctly, he's the guy I really wanted as the number one receiver in Las Vegas. Obviously, didn't work out. We'll get to that pick, but
we will. That's right. It's coming up.
Yeah, got to get the tears ready. Get a napkin. Get a Kleenex. Next, the New York Jets with the 11th overall pick selected Mekhi Becton, tackle out of Louisville, who is one of the largest human beings on the planet. I remember watching his combine video, and he's moving, and he looks like he's 400 pounds, and he runs like a 5 flat or something. But who did you have the Jets taking? I know you hadn't taken somebody other than Mekhi Becton. So who did you have?
Absolutely, I did. I went with Trayvon Diggs, right? The Cowboys took him second round here, pick 51. But if you look at the Jets roster here in terms of cornerbacks, you look at it and you're like, who are these cornerbacks? I think they're starting like a 5th round rookie and some guy named Plasan Austin. I'm like, I looked at it, I was like, who are these guys? Why didn't the Jets take a cornerback like in this
I actually
draft?
have this written down. Pierre Desir, Brian Poole, and Arthur Mallett.
Who? Yeah, you're like, what? Who? Exactly. You're like, who? So Trayvon Diggs was my pick here. He was a first team all. He has one first team All Pro. He's a couple of Pro Bowls. Obviously, he's coming off a major leg injury from last year, but one of the best corners in the NFL. Was on his way to being a shutdown corner. So hopefully he recovers. But definitely a really good cornerback here for the Jets.
He has 18 interceptions already in his career.
That's insane. And he missed a year.
Yeah, he played two games last year. But I will say, I do think my guy, AJ Terrell, cornerback out of Clemson, is a better player.
AJ Terrell over yes. Trayvon. Wow.
I think
I was surprised you took Jalen over Trayvon too, but okay.
Yeah, I think Diggs has benefited from being on really great defenses and playing with, DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons, all these other guys that are incredible pass rushers. So I think he definitely benefited from that. I'm not taking it away from his playmaking ability. The fact that, again, he has 18 interceptions is just bonkers. I think he had 14 his second year. So great playmaker. But I do think AJ Terrell is more of a shutdown corner than Trayvon Diggs. If you understand the difference, like versus a playmaker versus a shutdown corner, like somebody like Namdi Asamoah, I think maybe has double-digit interceptions in his career just because people just don't throw at him. And I think Terrell is in that same mold, especially on really bad defenses with absolutely no pass rush. I don't think the Falcons have had a double-digit sack guy in 5 years. So I just think he would have fit right in. I know the Jets were awful. They're similar to the Jaguars where they had a ton of available options. They end up barely missing out on picking Trevor Lawrence and they end up with Zach Wilson. So that's a great what if. There's like one game they beat the Rams, I want to say, and ended up with the
Yeah, I
second
think that's
overall
what it
pick.
was. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, they were god awful that
They
year.
were bad.
So
Yeah, it was
it's
terrible.
another one. Yeah, you could have picked, I don't know, any number of guys for the Jets here. Next, this pick still hurts my heart. The Las Vegas Raiders drafted Henry Ruggs III, wide receiver out of Alabama. Did I say, well, with the 12th overall pick? Who did you have the Raiders picking here?
Definitely not Henry Ruggs. This pained me a little bit to do this, but I gave him Brandon Ayuk. Clearly,
Okay.
clearly needed a wide receiver. And you can argue, it's Ayuk or some other guy here, but definitely they needed a wide receiver, right? I think you could debate Higgins, Pittman Jr., Ayuk here, but I think Ayuk last year showed he was supremely talented. Even if they make that trade for Devontae Adams, they still got two really good wide receivers. Ayuk was an All-Pro last year, second team All-Pro. So if you're going to take a wide receiver, Ayuk, I think is the guy you got to take here. Obviously, there's other needs here for the Raiders that they could have gone with, but I think Ayuk, if your wide receiver was a big need at this time, and Ayuk would have been an upgrade for them here. And maybe Derek Carr sticks around again. I don't know. You don't know what was going on after that, but
Maybe John Gruden sticks around. I don't know.
doubt it. John Gruden was gone for other reasons,
Yeah,
not for performance for sure.
exactly.
But yeah, I think Ayuk would have been a great pick here for the Raiders, who apparently were exploring trading for him, maybe even so.
Yeah, as of August 13th, which I don't want them to do. But anyway, let's marinate. Let's sit on this pick for a little bit because I think we have some time. We're going to sit on my pick and of course the Niners pick as well. A couple things. So on Brandon Ayuk, do you think he is a better receiver than Michael Pittman? Because I know, I think he has better numbers. According to Football References, their proprietary weighted average or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Pittman is a better quarterback. He is not, or sorry, a better receiver. He hasn't played with as good of quarterback. I guess he played Jimmy Garoppolo, but he didn't play on as good of an offense as Brandon Ayuk. So, do you think Ayuk is a better receiver than Pittman? We'll touch on that real quick.
I do think so. I like Michael Pittman a lot. I think he's more in the mold of like a possession type receiver, where like you could compare him to like a Michael Crabtree type of guy, versus I think Ayuk is more dynamic. He's more versatile. He can kind of fit in wherever. He can run all kinds of routes. He can go get the deep ball. He's got those crazy long arms. He doesn't really have to jump ball. He can just reach up and grab the ball out the sky. So I think Ayuk's more versatile. Pittman is a guy you can just keep throwing the ball. He's a possession type receiver. He's not going to break any tackles. He's not going to like have major, like he's not going to beat a guy deep, but he can grab the ball, possession receiver, solid red zone guy, that type of player. I even think T. Higgins might be better than Michael. Yeah, I think T. Higgins might even be better than Pittman Jr. I'll throw that
I
out
thought
there.
about him as well as one of some of these picks. Again, there's so much talent, such a deep receiver
so
class.
Much talent, yeah.
Pittman, I think, like you said, more of a big body guy, possession guy, deep red zone threat. Ayuk is that deep threat, but he also is great after the catch. That's his thing as well. He's probably a little more shifty than Pittman, but I don't think you can go wrong with either of these picks. On Henry Ruggs, at the time, again, I deep dive into the drafts coming into every year for Just Blog Baby, and there was 4 guys that I really had circled that I thought the Raiders were going to pick one of these 4 dudes. It was Derek Brown, if he was available, Javon Kinlaw, who was available at this point, hasn't really worked out with the Niners, but I liked everything about him coming in, CeeDee Lamb, and Henry Ruggs. And you can kind of maybe draw like a half circle around Jerry Jeudy, but I thought, okay, if they want a big time, number 1 receiver that's going to run great routes and do all that, you're going to go with CeeDee Lamb. If you want a deep threat, home run threat, Tyreek Hill type threat, you're going to go get Henry Ruggs. And that's, I think, what ended up happening. And I know he's not going to make it in this redraft because of some bad decisions that he made off the field. But I do think before he got in trouble, he was rounding out into becoming one of the best deep threats in the NFL, if not, like the second or third best after Tyreek and Waddle. So it's not a bad pick. It's not a bad pick, obviously,
Yeah,
knowing what we know
it's
now.
not a bad. I agree with you. It's
Yeah.
not a bad pick, right? Obviously, off the field decisions that he made just were unfortunate, but I agree with you. He was on his way to kind of being like a Deshaun Jackson type wide receiver, right? He wasn't as big as maybe Tyreek Hill, but he's definitely on his way to kind of being a pretty good player.
Yeah,
And
he's
then
not the guy that's going to break
yeah,
tackles and do all
yeah,
that stuff, but he's a guy that's, his stat line would be like 4 catches for 130 yards and a
exactly.
touchdown, that kind
He
of
was the
thing.
burner. He was the burner guy, like Deshaun, for
Exactly. And we
sure.
know Derek Carr loves the deep ball. He's been doing it. He did it with Ruggs, did it with Nelson Aguilar. He's doing it now with Rashid Shaheed in New Orleans. So he's the type of guy that fits that type of quarterback. So anyway, enough on this pick. I went with a defensive tackle who I think is probably the second best defensive tackle in this draft, and that is Justin Madubuike, who plays for the Ravens. He has, I want to say, 20 or 25 sacks at this point in his career. Just an incredible all-around player. He's obviously benefited from being on a great defense, but he is the exact type of dude that the Raiders have been looking for a long time. That dominant defensive tackle, line him up next to Max Crosby. Now they have Christian Wilkins, who's in that similar mold of that pass rushing 3 technique. But I think if they had drafted Madubuike at this point, the defense would have been much, much improved over the last 4 years. We spent a lot of time on that one.
We had to, man. It's
All
the
right.
Raiders. We had
Yeah,
to.
we did. All right. The 13th overall pick, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers traded up into this slot. They drafted tackle Tristan Wirfs out of Iowa, who is off the board for both of us as the best offensive lineman / best tackle in this draft. Who did you have the Bucs picking here?
Yeah, with him off the board, I went with Jonathan Taylor, the best running back in this draft. I think the Bucs really needed running back help. I think they talked Leonard Fournette to come back into the season, right? Something like that. Ronald Jones is their starter for much of the season, things like that.
Fournette was released by the
Released.
Jaguars
Okay,
and came
and
to,
then
but we
they
thought he
came to
was
the
washed
Bucs.
up at this point.
Yeah, he was washed up at this point, right? Sorry, that was the next year. Then they talk him back into coming again.
Yeah. Didn't
So
work out as well the second year.
yeah, did not for sure. So I think you put Jonathan Taylor here. He was a beast as a rookie. He was first team All Pro like his second year. He leads the NFL in touchdowns, yards, all that good stuff. Beast of a running back. Tampa Bay set. Maybe they repeat. I mean, I don't think he makes any difference to them in this year, but the next year maybe he helps them repeat the next year. And Jonathan Taylor, outside of the injuries, the last year and a half, he's been a really good running back, but shelf life obviously for running backs in the NFL now is short, but I think you got to go with a supremely talented running back here, and you can fill your offensive line needs else at another point. But obviously debated that or Andrew Thomas here for the Bucs, but one or the other could have
I'm
worked.
surprised you passed up Thomas. I didn't even consider Taylor here. You brought up some good points. I just think running back, I mean, Leonard Fournette was good enough. Ronald Jones was good enough. When Tom Brady's your quarterback, does it really matter who your running back
It would
is?
have helped them the next year, Khaled. I mean, Tom Brady was 40.
He's probably 44, 45 at this point.
Was that what he was? I forget what he was at this point. He was up there in the 40s for sure. 42.
Yeah.
He was 42.
42. So I basically went on the defensive side. This is a guy that they drafted in the second round, and that's Antoine Winfield Sr., who is one of the few All Pros on this list.
Junior. You said senior.
I think it is senior. Is it junior? Junior.
He's junior.
You're right.
His dad.
Sorry.
His dad played.
His dad played. I know that. Great player. You already talked about his accolades, Super Bowl champ, all that stuff. He got he gave Tyreek Hill the peace sign after smacking them in the Super Bowl. So he's a fan. I'm a fan of his for that reason. So good player, great player, even. And I think they just couldn't pass him up again, or I couldn't let him drop much further than he had already dropped at this point. So, all right. 14th overall, your boys, the San Francisco 49ers, drafted Javon Kinlaw, defensive tackle out of South Carolina. Who did you have them picking here?
Yeah, before I jump into that, Khaled, just wanted I hated that pick when they made it. I was like, oh man, why are you doing that 1-for-1 replacement? You could get D tackle later. You already had some guys on the roster that could have filled that void. So I
And
didn't
when you're
like it
talking
at that time.
about 1-for-1, you're talking about replacing
When
DeForest Buckner, right?
Buckner, exactly right, because this was the pick they got from the Colts for Buckner. So I didn't love that pick. Like Kinlaw was not on my list. I was like, no, don't take this guy. I was all about if Tristan Wirfs was there, Derek Brown was there, CeeDee Lamb. That was kind of my top three on that pick. Like I was like, if we're going wide receiver, go CeeDee Lamb if he's there. Like take CeeDee Lamb. And then when the pick came and the other two guys were gone, I was like, definitely CeeDee Lamb. That has to be our guy. And I thought he was the Shanahan guy. You know, he does all the things Shanahan likes, but it didn't happen. So unfortunately, we take Juwan Kinlaw, who could have panned out if he didn't have those knee injuries. I think knee injuries kind of derailed him here, but the Niners would have been in a tougher spot today if he actually did pan out. Another guy they'd have to pay, not just Ayuk. And for all those reasons, Khaled, I went Derek Brown. I took him. I said, you know what, Derek Brown, he's on the board. That was the guy I liked at the time of the draft. Supremely talented defensive tackle. Need. He's a need for them. So he would have came in, filled in all those that void left by Buckner. Would have been a crazy dominant defensive line with him on there. And then
You guys
they'd have
love
to make.
drafting defensive linemen early. That's like your thing.
They
First, second
that's their
round picks.
thing. I don't know why. That they love it. They love it, but at least take one that's good. Like they've missed, I think, on almost every single lineman they've taken in the first round outside of Eric Armstead
Outside of
and
Bosa,
Buckner.
right?
I mean, yeah, right. Bosa, Arms. Like if you depends how far back you go, but Bosa, Armstead,
Sure.
Buckner, those are the three, right?
Yeah.
But they've taken like 20 of them in the first round. So
Yeah, and I misspoke actually. So when I was talking about the Raiders and how much I like Derek Brown, I still like him. I do think Madubuike has a higher pass rushing upside,
yep.
which I think is important. I don't think you can go wrong with either of these guys. So,
Yep.
obviously, great player, just got paid, going to be a cornerstone franchise, top 10 whatever defensive tackle.
Yep.
I went with Brandon Ayuk. I know you guys took him a few picks later. I thought it just made sense, right? He is exactly the Shanahan receiver. He likes to block. He is a run after the catch guy. You talked about his crazy long arms. I remember reading about that leading up to the draft was obviously that yak ability, but those long arms that help him make catches in traffic, help him keep defensive backs off of him. I liked him a lot coming into this class, and I wasn't too happy when you guys grabbed him a few picks later. Do you think he's going to be on the Niners this year? Again, it's August 13th. Do you think he's?
I think the ball is in his court. I just saw Rappaport just tweeted something like 20 minutes ago that Niners and Steelers have worked out the trade comp, and Niners have made one last final pitch to Ayuk on a long-term contract. So I think if I had to guess, I think Ayuk's taken this contract negotiations way too personally, and he's kind of fed up with the Niners, and he's going to offer the trade. That's what I'm thinking, because he's just fed up. He's just done. This is what kind of everything he's saying and doing in the media, on social media, all that stuff. It just sounds like he's just like tired of the Niners and their games, the mind games Shanahan and Lynch are playing with them right now. He's kind of done with that. And I
He
think
probably didn't
he's
love
gonna
the Pearsall pick, and
probably didn't love that either.
too many receivers.
Man, they're playing a lot of mind games with this dude. So I think he's like done, and he's gonna be a Steeler. I think we're gonna see that happen this weekend, Khaled.
All right. Well, he can go suffer with Justin Fields and
Russell
Wilson
See ya.
out in the cold in Pittsburgh. All right. We're getting close to the end here. The Denver Broncos, with the 15th overall pick, selected Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver out of Alabama. Who did you have the Broncos picking here?
Yeah, they clearly needed a wide receiver. To me, it came down to Pittman Jr. or T. Higgins, and I went T. Higgins. I like the upside there a little bit more. T. Higgins is putting up numbers, just being the number 2 guy to Jamar Chase. So I obviously, Drew Lock is the one throwing the ball, so maybe he doesn't put up quite those numbers. But if you're going to take a wide receiver, take one who's at least shown as flash potential here with T. Higgins or Michael Pittman Jr. But I think just for me, just slightly, T. Higgins gets the edge for me here.
I think either one would have been an upgrade. The thing is with Jerry Jeudy, it's like you see flashes, right?
You see it. You see
Obviously
it. Yep.
he's a division opponent for the Raiders. He's scored some crazy long touchdowns against our team or against my team. It's been, he'll take a 10-yard slant and take it to the house for 60, 70 yards. But at the same time, he's gonna make some easy drops. He's going to fumble. So it's like, is he a product of bad quarterback play, bad culture, health issues? It's like all these things rolled up, and it's just so situation dependent that I wonder. I think he's on the Browns now, and I'm like, okay, he's on a better team with a better offense, maybe a better quarterback. I don't know about
Maybe. Yeah.
Deshaun Watson. We'll see. Deshaun
But
Watson year
he's got to
two.
be better than old Russell Wilson and Drew Lock.
Does he though? I mean, he looked pretty bad
He
last year
could be. Yeah.
before.
Yeah. I mean, but he had that shoulder injury, right? So he didn't
Yeah.
have his masseuses available for him.
Hopefully, he's got some team approved physical therapists. No massages
Yes.
anymore, just physical therapy. Um,
Hmm.
so I went with a different direction. I thought obviously T. Higgins or Michael Pittman would have been great picks, but I think they had massive defensive issues at this point. I think they finished like 27th or 28th in total defense the next year. So I went Patrick Queen, who, for all the reasons we talked about already, he is a leader. He's a force in the middle. He is the franchise level middle linebacker that you look for. And again, I think the only reason the Ravens moved on from him is because they had to pay Roquan Smith, or they paid Roquan Smith. And they're just the Ravens. They just kind of they flip over a couch cushion and they find an all pro linebacker or an all pro edge rusher. Or some guys walking by their facility in Baltimore and they're like, hey, you want to play for us? And then he becomes all pro. So that's just what they do. So I think they weren't pressed basically to keep him. And now he's in Pittsburgh. So that's going to be fun. But I thought he'd be a great fit here as a leader on this team. Last but not least, AJ Terrell goes 16th overall to the Atlanta Falcons. So a cornerback out of Clemson. Who did you have the Falcons picking here with our last pick of the redraft?
Yeah, I think it was tough for me, Khaled. I debated just keeping AJ Terrell here or giving them Jalen Johnson, and then I also had Justin Madabuke on the board. So it was tough. I kept AJ Terrell here. He was a good pick. He's a solid cornerback. Like what he's been doing out there in Atlanta. He's kind of been the shutdown guy out there. It was, what was it, 2 years ago? I saw the Niners play the Falcons, and dude, he was not letting Ayuk open. He wasn't letting Debo open. He was shutting them down. So he's the only reason that Atlanta even got to mediocrity, probably on that defensive side. So great cornerback. So I kept the pick here.
Yeah, like I said, when I picked him 11th to the Jets, he's a true shutdown corner, and you don't find too many of those. He's already off my board. So I went with another corner. There's probably like 30 guys you could
Yeah,
have
there's
picked
so
here.
many. I was like in my honorable mentions, I was like, oh man, I gotta shorten this a little bit. I had like 15 guys still in my honorable mentions.
There's too many. I didn't even write any down because I'm like, all right, Jonathan Taylor, Darnell
Yeah,
Mooney. I don't know. There's so
so
many
many,
guys. Where I'm
so
like,
many.
Chase
Yeah,
Young is even an honorable
yeah.
mention, even though he hasn't been great.
L'Jarius
But
Sneed. Yeah,
L'Jarius Sneed, is he the best cornerback in this class? Did we overlook him? I don't know. Maybe.
maybe, maybe.
Um, and speaking of L'Jarius Sneed, I had him going here. So
There
I
you go.
totally stole that thunder. I debated between him and Trayvon Diggs, but for that, I think Sneed is another shutdown corner type versus that playmaker type. I know he has a decent amount of interceptions under his belt, but he just got paid. I think he's a great player. He's a guy that I've had to watch beat up on the Raiders for 2 years, or 2 times a year for the past few years. So I think again, you can't go wrong. There's so much talent here,
Can't.
but I
Nope.
just said let's go like for like, position for position, and grab a guy. I think he went in the third or fourth round out of Louisiana Tech. So yeah, L'Jarius Sneed is my pick here. So you said you had some honorable mentions. You want to throw some names
I'll
at
give
me?
you. I'll give you some. The guy who I just barely missed it for me, Justin Madabuke, Michael Pittman Jr., Jalen Johnson, L'Jarius Sneed, Andrew Thomas, a couple of other guys. Let's see, Jeremy Chin, the safety, Damian Lewis, the guard, Alex Highsmith, the linebacker. So a couple of guys like, I mean, the list could just go on. I'm just throwing out a few guys that I was like, oh, I got it. I thought about them, debated them, just didn't get them in there for sure.
Yeah, I know we don't have too many pass rushers, like pure edge rushers. I thought
Yeah.
about
Oh,
Highsmith as well
yeah,
for a couple
Highsmith.
guys for a couple of these picks. the other name you mentioned, Jeremy Chin. I was like, do
Yep.
I knock him because he's not on the Panthers anymore, or just the Panthers were just such a shit show the past few years that you can't really fault him for that? So
Yeah,
ton of talent across the board,
ton of
and
talent.
just this was fun. This is tough.
This is a tough draft. This, yeah,
Was it too soon?
maybe a little too soon, but I mean, all these guys are getting paid, so we might as well explore it and let's see what happens with Brandon Ayuk, right? So I think it was the right time to do this. We'll come back to it again in like 5-6 years, college, when it's all said and done for most of these guys.
There you go. When Jordan Love has 3 Super Bowls and Justin Herbert is on his 5th team in 6 years.
That's he's probably gonna be the Raiders' future quarterback. Holly, don't worry.
You know, don't tempt me. Don't tempt me with a good time, man.
You got Tom Telesco out there now, right? He's the one who drafted him.
He is indeed. That is correct. So maybe Harbaugh says, I need my boy. I need JJ McCarthy back. Well, maybe we'll do a swap. Or
maybe
like that.
maybe he wants Colin Kaepernick back.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, we're getting too crazy now at the end of this pod.
I think he's 36. Is he 36 yet? 37?
He just came out and said, I could come and play. I can lead a team to a championship. I mean, he's saying all these things. He's like, I've still been training for the last 7 years or however long he's been out of the NFL. So he's still saying that. He's still saying, I want a shot. He's still saying, I want a shot 7 years later.
That ship has sailed, but good for him for trying. Thank you guys. Thank you, Sulman. Appreciate your time, man. Thank you guys for checking us out. Make sure to hit that subscribe, follow button wherever you're listening or watching this podcast. We are on all the major social media platforms at 4040 Vision Pod. Thanks, everybody.